This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovators Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome to Killer Innovations. How are you doing this week? We are back here in the studio for yet another show of Killer Innovations. We've been doing this for 16 years now. We're in our 16th season, and I actually look forward to coming into the studio and putting these shows together. One of the questions I always get is how do you come up with new content? How do you keep fresh after we average 40 to 50 new shows a year, and we've been doing this for, like I said, 16 years. But there's always something new going on. There's always new questions coming in from you, and we take those questions on. Now, we've been doing a series on innovation framework, specifically the FIRE framework: focus, ideation, ranking, and execution. This is a continuation of that discussion. We've been talking. We went through each one of those 4 sections. We actually did a special show just on Lean Canvas, which we believe is an integral part of the beginning of the execution phase. How do you think about that best top idea? How do you really think about it in the context of what is it really going to take to bring this idea to reality and make it highly successful? Now, in relation to a framework, the one question I get a lot about is what are all the different tools that I use when I am doing my own work, my organization, and my teams, whether it be where I'm at now or in my previous organizations where I ran the innovation efforts. What are some of those tools that I've used or that I have used? So this is the first of many shows in the future where I'll dive into and talk about the different kinds of tools. Now, if you're thinking that I'm going to get into this and say, okay, go buy X product from X vendor supplier, that is not what's going to happen. That's not what I do, because the tool I picked may not be the tool for you. I came from an organization with, 240,000 employees. My current organization is about 200 employees. The tools you use are going to need to be adapted to your organization. So rather than talking specifically about as a vendor or supplier of tools, I'm going to describe what I think are some of the capabilities you need to have in order to, just to bring this to fruition. How do you bring the FIRE framework and make it really usable within your organization? So today, we're going to talk about an underlying system, an underlying fundamental technology that will enable your FIRE framework. And so from that standpoint, it becomes the foundational piece. So the tool that I'm going to talk about is IMS, or your idea management system. Your idea management system becomes really that foundational piece. It supports everything from the beginning, thinking about the focus, to the ideation, all the ideas you generate, to ranking them, voting, and all of that, to managing your funnel for the execution phase. So the IMS is absolutely important. And we always use the slang term of IMS. It's really idea management system. Some people will refer to it as an innovation management system. Now, I deployed my first IMS in 2008. So I've 12 years, and I think in 2008, I had to be one of the first. This was when I was the CTO at HB. We chose a particular platform, which kind of had a little bit of a kernel, but they weren't even called IMS back then, right? You just found somebody that had kind of a workflow tracking system, and you got them to kind of modify it to work in the innovation space. That's what it was like back in 2008. Now, since then, in fact, some of the vendors we worked with have gone on to be quite successful and now have fairly mature platforms. Now, every IMS system has kind of its own little quirks, its own little assumptions built into as part of its basic platform. Um, but the good thing about now the IMS becoming much more mature is the fact that there's more competition, which keeps them honest. They have to continuously work on enhancing and improving their IMS platforms. So, with my 12 years of experience, what I'm going to share with you today are the 7 must have features in your IMS. So, if you're building an IMS, or you've procured an IMS, or you're integrating your IMS with other systems you have within your organization, these are the 7 must have features in your IMS. Okay, now let's get started. The first feature that you absolutely must have, and I put it number 1 because some people would think this is kind of fundamental to an IMS platform, but you would be surprised at how many IMS systems do not get this right. And that is the ease of idea capture. Right? You've got you're doing a brainstorming session, you've got hundreds of post-it notes scattered out all over the place. How do you get all of that captured and put into your IMS? Because the purpose of your IMS is to manage that funnel. You've done a lot of work, you've brought together your best and brightest people. How do you get those ideas into your IMS? Now, some IMS platforms will choose or force you to have to use their web interface. You've got to type the idea into their interface. That's the only way they take it. They just assume that they're operating it as a digital island. Everything must happen within the IMS platform. I'm not a big fan of that. I think you need to reduce the friction as much as possible to get everybody's willingness to submit ideas. And so, that can be, something as simple as allowing people to send an email to a very specific email address that then the IMS captures that email, creates a new idea with the content and the information contained in an email. Pretty easy. That's a nice way if you've got a field sales organization and they're out, meeting with a customer and a customer comes up with a really crazy idea. Boom. All they have to do is send an email. They have to log into another system. They don't have to load another mobile app. They don't have to do single sign-on to get authenticated to get into the system to put an idea in. They can just simply, send off an email, and off you go. You may have other tools. You may have other platforms you're using, generating ideas. There's a lot of ideation platforms out there. You'd want to be able to take those ideas and import them, get them in. The key is literally every sticky note that gets generated in a brainstorming session should find its way into your IMS platform. And how easy or how hard that is, people will start making shortcuts. They're like, oh my God, I got 300 post-it notes. I'm going to use my phone. I'll take some pictures. I'm going to go back to my desk. I'm going to type them in, right? It's a total pain, right? So then you're saying, okay, I won't do each individual post-it note. I'll just do the groups of post-it notes, or I'll just do the top 5 post-it notes. No, you need to really create the discipline, and you need to find the tools to make it as easy as possible in order to get literally every one of those post-it notes into your IMS, because that's that historical, that's an archive. Also, with each of those post-it notes, you should be able to track who wrote that post-it note, because that being the originator of that idea, and we'll talk later in today's show about why that is important. It's also in an organization, it triggers all kinds of legal issues. So you want to be able to track who came up with that idea. So you got to find a way. So ease of getting those ideas in, that idea capture process becomes absolutely critical if you're out there selecting and evaluating an IMS platform. You want to have as much flexibility as possible to have where ideas can come in from your website, from an email system, from a web page that you create around a specific collection or request for ideas that you're trying to get in. However that is, you need to make it as easy and as low friction as possible. Otherwise, that's that first speed bump you and your organization are going to hit and really leveraging a value of an idea management system. So, this is just one of the 7. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back to go through the rest of the 6. Welcome back. We are talking today about the 7 must-have features you need to have in your IMS, your idea management system. We've already covered number 1. Next one on the list is around the support for your community of innovators. Early on, I didn't really appreciate this capability, which actually becomes really, really critical for the idea management platforms, and that is it really starts to aggregate up this community. It brings all of your innovators together. It becomes a common system. It's where they're putting in their own ideas. It's where someone may put an idea in and then they want to put out a request to the other innovators, say, hey, take a look at this and tell me whether I'm off base or what am I missing? And it becomes a back and forth communications process using your IMS platform. It allows you to capture all that history. So the ability to really create this community of innovators. Now, I think a lot of the IMS platforms that are out there do a pretty good job of people commenting about ideas, but they don't really grasp this concept of community, right? Of how do you bring people together? How do you aggregate up maybe a subset around a particular opportunity or area? Or how do you incentivize people to engage in this community? In many cases, people take it as a passive kind of process. They take it as I'm just going to participate and I'm not going to, I'm going to observe but not engage, right? But you really want a community where people are going to engage in this. Uh, so if you're looking out there at an IMS platform, you really want to think about this community. One of the most common features that the community, this part of the IMS, you really need is how easy it is for someone to what we call plus an idea. So if someone creates an idea, then as people go through and look at that idea, you want other innovators to plus it, make it better, make it 10 times better, 2 times better, 10 times better. How would you take that idea and make it better? How do you build upon it? How do you use that first idea as an inspiration? And then how do you build on that? And then how do you keep track of that? Right? So who came up with the original idea? What was the idea that spurned from that? That's the value of an IMS platform. And so, this community piece, the ability to plus becomes one of those important activities that you need to make sure your IMS is effective in. It also is, you want to ask for feedback. If I post an idea, I need a way to communicate to other innovators to say, I've just posted this new idea. Love to get your feedback. Can you take a look at it, post some comments, and let's begin a discussion around this idea that I have. And then also, it's a great way to celebrate ideas. When an idea gets selected or it gets funded, and I've talked about this in the past on some past shows on failure, where at HP, we actually put a process in place where we celebrated ideas that were killed, that were stopped, right? Because I want to reward people for trying. Not every idea is going to work out, but you get recognized for the fact that you tried. So using the IMS platform is also a means of celebration of highlighting those ideas that got their funding or the ones that got stopped. They figured out that, hey, sounded like a good idea, but really wasn't all that great of an idea. So we're going to kill it. Hey, congratulations, man. You guys really did a great job. Celebration becomes a piece of the IMS. And to be quite honest, I haven't seen an IMS yet that even considers doing the celebration piece. Okay. The next is enable an open innovation opportunities. Open innovation is kind of turned into this buzzword thing over the last 5 years or so, and I've been doing it for 25 years. But it's about opening it up to allow people from outside your organization to contribute and to be part of that. That includes things like competitions. You host a competition, you make it public, you give some kind of a prize for the best idea that got submitted. So you host those kinds of open innovation competitions. Or you may do an open innovation, but you're going to offer or you're going to aim it at very specific companies or organizations. This kind of fits into a category of companies that I refer to as co-innovation partners. So co-innovation partners, you plus one or two other companies where you have a common interest around an opportunity or a problem area, and you want to collect up all of that energy and all of those ideas, and you need an IMS platform in order to track that. You want to get it, you're putting together a team that's made up of two different organizations, and you got to collect those ideas. And depending on how your agreement and relationship is, um, who owns the intellectual property at the other end of this. We're going to talk about that a little bit later in today's show. But open innovation, co-innovation becomes an important subset of that open innovation effort. The other is university joint venture. I am a big believer in funding university joint ventures, and those opportunities to fund university programs, get PhDs and postdocs or grad students, whatever, working in a research area that you're keenly focused on. And as a result of that, then you need to be able to capture that idea. And you need to show what the lineage of that idea came from. And maybe the idea doesn't pan out. I mean, we had some recent ones, recent to us, right, to where I'm at now, but we funded some work at a major university 8-9 years ago, and it took that long till fairly recently to where that idea, which we captured 8 years ago, to actually turn into something timing wise, market readiness wise, all of that, in order to get the idea ready to go to market. And so we used the IMS platform to keep track of that and go back every once in a while and really rethink, is this the right timing for that idea, or should we pass it on? So enabling the open innovation opportunities is important. And one way to do that within your IMS platform is to have the ability to allow other people to have an easy way to get their ideas submitted, to have an easy way to scan through ideas around the specific project or opportunity or problem statement so they can collectively participate and see and vote and do all the things that we talked about in the framework with ideation and ranking. So again, open innovation. If you're not doing open innovation, one, you should be. Two, your IMS platform needs to enable those open innovation opportunities in whatever form, shape, size that they come in, to get as many and broad ideas as possible. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back to our conversation on the 7 must-have features. Welcome back to the show. We are having our discussion today around what are those 7 must-have features for your IMS system, your idea management system. So what are those 7 features? So what's the next one on my list? The next one on my list is one that I call the flexible and powerful workflow. So the is like with any other enterprise application. In many cases, those enterprise applications are designed with a certain philosophy in mind, with a certain perspective. And they don't, it's not intentional, but they inherently create a step or a series of workflows, the workflows that enable the feature set within that particular IMS platform. The reality is what you want is you want an IMS system that adapts to you, not you adapting to your IMS platform. It's a tool. It is not the be all end all. It's not the magic sauce that is all of a sudden going to make your organization highly innovative. It is a tool. It's a tool like a spreadsheet. It's a tool like a database. It's a tool like a blank Word document. It's a tool. You want the tool to adapt to you, not you adapting to the tool. And to do that, you need to have a flexible and powerful workflow. You need to define the workflow for your innovation framework and for all the tools and processes that you're putting in place that you're building on top of the framework. If you're using FIRE, then that's what tools you're using for focus, ideation, ranking, execution. And IMS needs to support those four key elements. And so a flexible and powerful workflow. Now, you can go crazy, right? And you can do all kinds of customizations around these IMS tools. I would caution you at the same time. I'm telling you to be highly flexible and adapt it to yourself. But when you select your IMS, you want to make sure that the customizations you're doing to yourself allow for the system underneath to be easily updated and adapt itself to the workflow you've defined. What you don't want is do a bunch of deep customizations such that you're now stuck and you can't take on the new version of whatever it is they have created. So you want to make sure that, yes, it's flexible and powerful, but that it's architected in such a way that as they enhance it and improve the IMS, you're not changing the workflows that you've created, or you don't get yourself stuck not being able to accept the new version of the IMS. A lot of the IMS platforms now have gone cloud based, which is great. But in some cases, can be somewhat limited as to the customizations you can make, right? But I think that there is still a lot of that flexibility. You got to think about what is it you need, and what is the tool that allows you to do what it is you need to do. But do not overlook the ability to customize the workflow. And you want to have workflows that maybe you're using for your normal internal processes, and maybe you have a different workflow for open innovation projects or co-innovation projects or university funded research. So make sure that whatever IMS platform you choose has that a really, really strong and flexible workflow. The next must-have feature is it must manage the entire idea lifecycle. Ideas go through a life cycle. Once an idea gets started, many people, different parts of the organization are going to touch that idea. That idea may get funded, and it may go off and become being done by a whole team. It may get stopped. Maybe the idea never got funded, but it got put into the IMS system, and it may get resurrected at some point in the future. Keep in mind that the crux of your idea lifecycle really is driven by the ideation, ranking, and then the early stages of execution. And particularly with ideation and ranking, that's a continuous repeat. You may rank an idea and you say it didn't quite make the bar, it didn't get funded. We put it into the IMS. You need the ability in the idea life cycles to go back to the idea and say, you know something, let's re-rank this idea. We've had better improvements of microprocessor technology, software, higher speed networks, better camera, whatever it is that could change the ranking of an idea and pop that ranking up, and all of a sudden now it becomes a really key idea for some activity that you've got within your organization or on your team. So, the idea life cycle, an idea never is like dead. You may not move it forward with execution, but an idea lives in the IMS, and you want to be able to go back through and do things like postmortems. Go back and look at all the ideas that got funded, what percentage actually shipped, how many of them died, and what could you learn from the process of which ideas got selected, which ideas were successful, which ideas timing wasn't right. Maybe you learned something about timing. So those are all things that you want to make sure the tool manages. Now, I'm going to take a little bit of a deviation here, right? And give you one example on managing the idea lifecycle. And that revolves around selection, right? This is we've talked about this in some of the previous shows, talking about the ranking. So go back to the show on ranking, which is within 6 shows ago. Go watch that or go listen to that show again. And we talk about the criteria ranking, getting questions and having each person on your team score a given idea, score 1 to 5 for each of the 5 questions. Now, in your IMS, you want to capture all of this information. You want to capture the answers from this whole process of these ideas. Why? Because once you've scored them, that means that's the scoring at that given moment in time. A year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, the scoring would maybe completely different because of some change, some other innovation that's come about. So again, managing the idea life cycle. It is absolutely critical. It is foundational to the IMS. Make sure you understand how it operates and how it operates in the way you think the idea life cycle is going to live within your organization. The next key feature is protection. How do you protect the catalog of ideas? Now, you could take this, could be just basic security and encryption and those kinds of things. Yes, make sure your CIO and your chief security officer takes a look at it, because this is an enterprise application that you want to make sure is protecting your ideas. But I'm also talking about in the broader context of protecting the catalog of ideas. What is your process for patenting? How do you select which ideas do get patented? How do you track the inventors who all contributed to that idea? Now, I'm not aware of any IMS system that has a patent management system built in. There are separate patent management systems that stand separate. So in this case, the ability to interface your IMS platform with whatever system you're using to track the patents that you're submitting to. So how do you think about that? How does that interface work? Do you have a patent management system? How do you, within IMS, tag an idea that says, something? This one is foundational to some future work. We want to get a patent started on this, or we want to get a provisional patent. If you're not familiar with the whole patenting process, 16 years, I'm sure I've talked about patents many times in previous shows. Just go over to Kill Innovations, go to the search bar on the right-hand side, type in patents or intellectual properties, and it'll bring up a number of shows that you can listen to hear about patents and intellectual property and the process within your innovation efforts. So your IMS has to have some basic features that allows you to support the overall patenting process, along with protecting your ideas. In some cases, you may say, we're not going to patent, we're going to treat it as a trade secret. That's a whole different process. So, again, you may have a great idea, but you got to make sure that your organization and how your organization operates from the standpoint of protecting those ideas, that your IMS system supports that. So, that wraps up. That was the number 7. But when we come back from this commercial break, let's go back. We're going to talk some more about each of those 7. So don't go anywhere. welcome back to Killer Innovations. Actually, I told a fib as we were wrapping up the last segment. I said we had done all 7. We actually have not. There's one that most IMS and most people procuring IMSs do not think about. So, what is actually the 7th must-have feature? And that is incentives and recognition. People don't participate in innovation efforts just out of the goodness in the heart, right? We always ask each other, we ask ourselves, why would I contribute? Why would I spend the time? What's in it for me? And that applies to the innovation effort. It applies to everything, right? But when it comes to the innovation efforts, your IMS platform can actually be very beneficial to incentives and recognition. Incentives. So, some organizations that I've been a part of, we pay for patents. If you submit an idea that actually then gets selected, you get paid so much, for instance, on the legal department saying, yes, we should patent this. Boom, you get a spiff of some kind, some money or whatever. And then when the patent is actually filed, because there's a lot of work you have to do between having a little post-it note with an idea to getting something written up that is appropriate for a patent office. Another spiff. Patent gets awarded. Another spiff. Right? So those are all incentives. You can use your IMS system to track that, right? To know where the patents or what are their incentives. Other incentives is everybody has to submit 10 ideas every year, right? Part of individual objectives. Did everybody do it? Who did more? Who did less? You can track that. The other is recognition. Now, in the case of recognition, that can turn into things like gamification, right? So people earn badges by having so many ideas, or so many ideas that turned to patents, or so many ideas that shipped, or so many ideas that other people plussed, meaning it was a good foundational idea that was an inspiration for others. All kinds of recognition. So when you're looking at your IMS, think about it in the context of your incentives and recognition that you want to build in to encourage your organization, your team, to really get energized and engaged, and and get something back for the effort of submitting ideas into the system. And incentives and recognition is also a great way to, when you're first launching a tool like an IMS, if you don't already have one, if you're just deploying your first one, it's one way to get people to kind of step up and really get engaged and to really take advantage of it. So again, the 7 must-have features in your IMS are: number 1, ease of idea capture; 2, support the community of innovators; 3, enable open innovation opportunities; 4, flexible and powerful workflow; number 5, manage the idea lifecycle; number 6, protect the catalog of ideas; and 7, incentives and recognition. These are the 7 must-have features based on my dozen years of deploying IMS platforms across multiple organizations, and more recently helping chief innovation officers or CEOs think about what do they want out of an IMS platform as they're going through their RFP and selection process. So, and if you are interested in taking advantage or getting help on selection of your IMS platforms, you can also check out working with the Innovators Network. And that's made up of chief innovation officers and CTOs and CEOs from innovation companies. These are all very senior people, large multinationals down to brand names you would know. They've deployed IMS platforms. That group can be uniquely powerful to advise you if you are in the process of wanting to select an IMS platform for your own use. Now, the IMS platform is, again, it's a tool that supports the overall framework. And we talk about both an IMS platform. We also talk about the Innovation Program Office. How do you staff and manage an organization that supports your innovators? We talk about all of that in the Disruptive Ideation Workshop. So hop on over to disruptiveideation.com. And we do those workshops again live or virtual, and it's done by the Innovators Network. And that is a great team of individuals who have great experiences. Again, have all been innovation leaders in a variety of different organizations and a variety of different industries. That's an organization that has been there, done that kind of experience, not professional consultants who read something. These are people who actually live it. And that's who you can learn from with the Disruptive Ideation Workshop for your organization, for your team. With that, let's wrap up today's show. Greatly appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to listen or watch. We're on YouTube, so you can catch it over on the YouTube channel. But if you're listening to it on the podcast, greatly appreciate you taking the time to listen. Drop me a note over at phil@killerinnovations.com if you have any questions or anything questions that you're dealing with within your organization or your team, or something that you think would be a question that would be beneficial to the entire audience. And you never know, we might do an entire show on your question. Check out the blog over at philmckinney.com. I do writing about leadership and culture and those types of things over there. If you want to get connected, text the word innovation to 44222 or send an email to innovation@killerinnovations.com. That will get us connected. You will get the weekly newsletter, which gives you the 3 most important new content on innovation that we think you should be checking out. So you want to subscribe to that, not miss anything, and keep up on what's the latest and greatest in the world of innovation. So with that, I'm going to thank you again for taking the time. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back next week here at Killer Innovations. Have a great week and go create a game-changing idea. Bye-bye.